remember that. And he goes, "Who the hell is down there?" And he's
lead tracking and Google Analytics integration. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker and our sponsor, Kuang Chen from Captricity. So this is a new thing for us. My one-liner is, it seems like paper integration into Salesforce. That's a new one. We've had a lot of different integration things, so I'm sure that's not all it is, but yeah, no way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For that good summary. Maybe I don't even need to talk anymore, but thanks again for organizing too, because this is definitely community service that you're doing. So if you haven't checked out CloudAmp, please do so. So I'm going to push a button here. I like to tell stories, and I like to tell stories through pictures. So this is a this is the data entry room in a Ugandan health clinic, and this is where I spent quite a bit of time during my PhD dissertation. They have a computer. You can see that computer is connected to the internet sometimes. And it's entirely plausible that they run Salesforce. They don't, but it was entirely possible because they actually were running an electronic medical record system that was web-based. It's absolutely insane, and it's totally awesome at the same time. So I was there because I was really interested in how can we make rural health clinics a lot more efficient. And I did things like follow around community health workers in kind of the peri-urban areas in Tanzania where the HIV/AIDS rate was really high, just to see, how does a high school educated person go around the community helping somehow to make the sort of mortality and morbidity a little bit better. One of the things that they do is they carry around these logbooks, and these logbooks are, for a lot of people in the world, the only time that they're ever enumerated, they're ever counted in something. There's no census in these places. They, according to the government, doesn't even exist. And these community health workers, they carry these logbooks, and you can see, they like to say they're mobilizing, so they're getting on their bikes and they're going to ride out into the communities, and they're going to enumerate and actually make people kind of matter in some ways. And what do they do? And this is, some of you may be wondering what's the point of all this, but what do? They do data analytics, okay? So this was on the wall of the health clinic where I worked. And it's a bar chart, and notice the year, it's 2007 and 2008. That's not ancient history, right? They want so much to understand what's happening in their community, what's happening in their program, that they will manually draw with a ruler and a pen and marker based on the stuff that they counted in their communities, a bar chart of how much malaria there was. And so in the abstract, what we're talking about is that, well, that single computer that you saw that was connected to the internet, well, that's sort of the last mile problem as we traditionally know it. But that last mile problem being solved with things like mobile phones and stuff turns into what's essentially a first mile problem of actually now organizations all over the place, not only in Africa, but here are connected now to the internet. They're connected to the data, kind of, and now they're all trying to make use of it somehow. They're trying to get to their bar chart, okay, on the wall. And that's sort of where I think we all come in. What makes the data really compelling, what they're really trying to get to, and this is probably the best thing that I did while I was over in East Africa. Nothing to do with my research, I taught the village doctor how to use Excel pivot tables. And we took what the community health workers collected, and we're able to create some visualizations like, the number of women who are delivering at home versus at the clinic, because if you deliver at home, it's really, really dangerous and one of the primary causes of child mortality. And they want to track that, because if women are delivering at home, then that's a big problem. The community health workers aren't getting to those households, right? That's besides the point. The point is they want to get here from pieces of paper. And I think that metaphor is kind of apt for a lot of different places and locations. So here, the World Food Program had a huge backup because they couldn't figure out how and where to deliver those goods, right? And I think in the same way, when data gets backed up, it's in paper form, it's an innovation pileup. Instead of materials, it's data. And so, I wonder how many of your companies and your clients have that problem. They have bookshelves or bookcases or piles on desks of this concept of an innovation pileup. And the solution, the best solution to this problem is still, in America and everywhere else, that guy. He is a data entry clerk, and he sits there and he types stuff in, right? There's these really expensive solutions that you could buy, and but the sales model is kind of like SAP, right? Like you can go buy a big Kofax or open text implementation. They'll come and for like $500,000, you can get some enterprise data capture. But if you can't afford that, then you hire that guy. He's actually a really good friend of mine. Makes peanut butter now. So what we wound up building was a system that takes paper. You can image it in whatever way you want. So here, it's an iPhone on a stand. And in the cloud, we have a service that uses a combination of machine learning and crowdsourcing. So Amazon's Mechanical Turk. And it just automatically takes the information from the data, from the paper, and translates it into sort of very clean, very accurate structured data. And that's what Captricity is, and that's where we came from. So what does it look like today? We have essentially three main things that we do. We make it really easy to capture documents from things like Box and Dropbox or your scanner, or we have a mobile app in the iTunes App Store. And we send it to our sort of combination of machine learning and computer vision and crowdsourcing cloud. You don't have to worry about that because essentially you do an HTTP post or you come to our website and you drag and drop from your desktop. And what comes out is a digital data set that looks like a Google Spreadsheets interface that Brian will show you in a second here, that you can push into Salesforce. And we also have an API. And so I think that's, for the developers in the room, that's really important. So, Brian?
So now, I love trying to follow up that story because it's not nearly as fun just showing the demo as it is actually talking through kind of client experience. So let me pull it up here quickly. And, okay. So I'll put the deck away as well. Let's see, is that more or less, not quite the right size, it's a little bit big, but I think you'll forgive me. So what I'm going to show you here is quickly how this works. And so fundamentally what we're talking about is not just that paper problem in Africa. I think coming back, we realize that this problem and talking to customers who are already using the system, your fax flow, whether your PDFs that are coming in as email attachments, basically these are still just documents that you get in this image format, and you need to get that information into Salesforce where it's going to be useful for you. And so the system is, as Kuang mentioned, super, super easy to use. So there are three main steps. You upload your documents, Captricity goes to work, and we process that information, we give you back the data, and then you push that information to Salesforce. Now I'm not going to run through specifically those steps tonight. Rather, what I'm going to show you are two kind of additional pieces. And these are the two setup pieces, because I want to show it to you because it's super easy to do. And so that is, you got to tell the system what's the information we want, and you got to tell us where to put that information in Salesforce. So those are two steps I'm going to show you tonight, but you don't do that every time. As soon as you do that once, we save that mapping, and the next time that you come back, it's upload documents, process it with Captricity, push the data to Salesforce. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm pretty sure I'm already logged in here, so this is that first step where you tell the system what information you need out of any of these documents. And so I'm going to start, create a new job here quickly. And I haven't cleaned out this account in a little while, so it's going to take a second for all of those templates to load. And what I'm going to do is grab a blank version of the form. In this case, we're talking about, it's just a little service invoice that came from a small heating and AC company. Drag that right in here. And what we're going to do is pop up the blank version of that form. Wonderful. Anyways, this is the setup part, and I'm going to show you exactly how easy it is. It's drawing boxes with the cursor exactly where you want to indicate kind of where's the information on the form that you want us to capture. Provide a little bit of information here. This work to be. This looks like it's a multiple choice field, probably a select one. It's going to be COD, charge, no charge. And then we go on from there. And draw a box around the name field. Let everyone know that's a name. The street, the city, and so on. I'm not going to keep drawing boxes. We can do that on tonight. I think you realize exactly how simple this is to get the form set up. A form like this that's even fairly complex takes about 10-15 minutes to get set up, and again, you have to do it just once. Once that's set up, so here I am going to have to try and make everything a little bit smaller. Yeah. Hit next. So this is that first step I told you about. We just upload some of the files. So here, first I want to show you, we can plug right in the box or Dropbox. You have these files in a folder. There's several scanners right now, these super easy little office scanners that one touch scans a box or Dropbox. Put everything in that file. We can pull it from there. I'm just going to, for the time being, grab a few of these images, we drag them over, and they'll get uploaded. Now I'm not going to actually sit here and make you watch kind of the upload process. That's not terribly fun. What I'm going to do is jump actually to the baked cake here. Oops. And what that is essentially, as Kuang mentioned, we turned it into a spreadsheet, into kind of the Google spreadsheet interface was what he mentioned. And so this is, we've taken each of these documents. This is an example of one of those documents that we uploaded, and this is kind of the extreme example where, like we said, it was coming from a paper form. You can see it's handwritten data, and we've turned that out in this first row in that spreadsheet are all the different fields of data from that form that we just extracted. What's really cool about it is you can come here at any point in time, click on any of those fields, and actually see that information behind it. I mean, this again is a great example of this really terrible handwriting. That shows you a little bit the power of kind of that combination of the machine learning plus the crowdsourced input. But fundamentally, it's just data, and it's a data set. And there's Andrea talking to me. Sorry about that. So really what we want to show you, again, this being super easy. Once you have your data, you can review it here. Unfortunately, this is the demo I have. We just added this beautiful review interface, and I actually don't have any errors in this data set to actually show you how this works just yet. So I apologize for that, but you can come here and get a really quick review. Thank goodness there are no errors. So once you have your data nice and clean, we want to export it to Salesforce. So here's that second step that I told you only have to do once, is the mapping into Salesforce. And you start by selecting the object you want to map to. We're going to pop up any of the required fields for that object. It's going to be Salesforce fields on the left, Captricity fields on the right. Going to add a few additional ones here. And so let's say we want maybe a street and a city, maybe a phone number too, whereas there's the kind of phone. As you can see, we're already making our best guess at what it is over here, but we're going to correct that to city. And we're going to save that mapping. Now what I want to show you here is I've actually got it set up ahead of time. So let's say that for this little heating and AC contractor, these are my accounts. You know, we've got 5 of them in here already. Just got a whole bunch of new invoices, a whole bunch of new work that was done. So I'm going to come here is select the account. So I've already mapped this object. I'll show it to you here quickly. So just a few fields. Going to go ahead and select that object. Hit export. This time, since I have a few accounts in there, I might want a few more. Going to use our upsert option. Hit next. We'll verify that data. And this is the part in the demo where it goes a little bit slowly when the internet is in a place that's new to us. But there we go. So we've created those new records. And it's an asynchronous push. So this usually also makes it a little bit fun. So we go refresh, and you can see there's a few more records there. So we've updated any of the existing records and created new ones where they didn't exist before. But we also need that detail. So this is a master detail relationship I have set up. Just kind of for the sake of this demo, so I'm going to come back here. Now that we have the master objects, I'm going to grab that detail object, hit export. This time we'll just create some new records one more time. And all that data flows seamlessly and immediately, almost immediately, asynchronously, into Salesforce. And so what you start to see in the folks that are using this on a day-to-day basis, one happens to be they work in med supplies, and so they get thousands of orders via fax in every day. These are big insurance companies who have, essentially when they approve a patient for some type of treatment, they send a fax to this distributor, and that's the product order. So they get, they're dealing with 30 to 50,000 of these faxes a month. And what they're starting to do is just upload the information right to Captricity, process all of that information, usually overnight, and then one click of a button, they're pushing into Salesforce, where they're managing the relationship with all those patients and all kind of the sub-distributors they work with downstream. And so you can see this was causing a huge bottleneck for them immediately, just as they were kind of at the steady state, I would say, but they're growing. And so we've seen tons of customers say, hey, I started this process, it was manual entry into Salesforce because we know there's power in Salesforce, but as I start to grow, I just have to keep hiring more people. And that gets really, really onerous, and the data starts to back up, as Kuang mentioned. And so this creates a cloud workflow that end-to-end just automates that process. So I've probably talked a little bit too long already. Do you have any questions? Yeah, please.
You mentioned that there's a 99% success rate. What do you do with the errors? Like, how do you notify somebody of errors? Say you have 100,000 records coming in, that means 1,000 are going to be bad. What do you do?
That's a great question, and Kuang, you're welcome to jump in here as well if you want.
So,
Stand back, please.
with any data set, there's bound to be errors. That's why we never say it's 100%. We, unlike an OCR solution, which will just kind of make its best guess, even though it's invalid, we'll actually flag things as quote unquote impossible in the interface. Now, if you try to export something to Salesforce that's impossible, what will happen is that we'll reject it, and we'll put it into this review interface right here. And that review interface essentially becomes, what we do is we put the little image shred of what the answer is and the problem right next to it. And we'll basically say, well, this is a problem. We're not going to be able to fix the Salesforce for you. Why don't you fix it? And if you fix it, then we kind of mark it as not a problem anymore. So it just kind of creates a set of, almost like a to-do list, and you have somebody on the team who is trained to resolve these, and they can quickly rip through and fix them, or you can hit ignore and just kind of say, well, we can't quite fix that. Does that make sense? Can we show?
Yeah, let's throw actually. So let's go ahead and throw.
Make it blank or something. Yeah, so typically when it shows up, it looks like impossible. Okay. And then if we try to,
So yep, it's already popping up as an error. So if we turn on the export errors, it's going to flag that field.
so it counts it once for every single object that you're potentially going to export that to, and it's going to basically say that, hey, that value is required, but you don't have anything valid there to put in, so you might as well put something in here, or you can just go ahead and ignore it.
I realize it varies because depending on the data that you're capturing, but just generally, what kind of time frames is the processing happening?
That's a good question. So it's counted as multiples of 30 minutes. So a small job, 30 minutes, larger job, an hour, and then a really big one. So let's say you dump 150,000 pages on this, it might take a few days. Yeah. And different size jobs run with different kind of priority lanes. Super big ones will make sure that the little ones don't get behind. Yes?
So I do a lot of work with medical device companies and in Salesforce. And the number one question in any implementation is always HIPAA compliance and patient privacy. We're using medical as an example. So what you have, like if I were to present this to one of my clients, that's kind of like, that's my biggest stumbling block trying to put any new system on is they want to know exactly what are your security measures and compliance for HIPAA.
Okay. Would you take us to the privacy page, Brian, so we can have a visual? So the system, I don't know if you saw in my part of the the presentation was called Shred. It's actually named after the office appliance. Because what it does is it actually cuts apart the form according to the little boxes that you draw. And as long as we don't show 3 pieces of PHI in one place, it's not a violation. In fact, when we show one, and anybody, even our crowdsourced workers who are anonymous on the web anyway, only see one. And so if you just scroll up, Brian, keep going. So each worker will see, let's say, this 4-digit number. That could be the last 4 of a social, because you drew a box around the last 4 of a social. And they have no idea what that is. Or this 2-digit number, they have no idea what that is. And so by design, it's secure. But to satisfy like sort of the bureaucrats in every company, we have begun our HIPAA compliance process, and we're, fingers crossed, going to announce our compliance publicly in mid-July. So even now, we're engaging with sort of medical and healthcare companies now, basically under the assumption that we'll be successful in that announcement.
So do you take care of?
I think you were next, but 1 and 2, please.
Do you take care of the HIPAA compliance part, or is the onus on the medical device company to make sure that things are marked as not able to be seen by the same mechanical Turk?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so, certainly during the document definition phase, when you're drawing boxes, if for some reason you draw a box around, the whole page, that's not something that's not a good situation. And so clearly, if you have PHI on your page, we ought to go through a review of your kind of document definition to make sure that that's super easy, right? It's just box sizing is the size of the issue. But in terms of, especially given the recent changes in HIPAA, if you're a covered entity and we're going to sign a BAA with you, then we're taking that on fully, and our sort of framework provider, which is AWS, recently just started signing BAAs as well, which was is also unprecedented. So I think there's a kind of a sea change shifting in that direction of taking responsibility, and I think that's a good thing. So.
I think it's an interesting concept. If you go back more than 10 years ago, we had example when people used to typewriter, and OCR technology came in, and there was a big revolutionary idea that you don't have to retype the thing again. You scan it, and OCR recognizes the thing, and then you can see probability of errors, spelling errors or something. It was a great innovative thing at that time. No, I think what you're doing here is like if a doctor has bad handwriting, the doctors write prescription, you can tell only the guy who writes the prescription knows what it is. Does it recognize handwriting?
Well, you can see it does recognize handwriting. Yes, it does. So anything that's unambiguous, it will do. And I have a couple of we actually frequently get the challenge of, well, what do you do with doctor's handwriting because it's notoriously bad? And the answer is we don't do anything with it. We mark it as impossible, and we give it back to the doctor. And honestly, for Ugandan doctors, a great way to train them to write a little better. That's because that's the thing is doctors are used to having staff that uniquely can decipher their scrawl, and if we mark it as impossible and source it back to that staff, that's one solution, or they can get a little better in writing. That's another solution. But we did run a test. What is the accuracy rate if we make really long, really ambiguous, really tough to read, but rather unambiguous? Let me start over there. We took really long Ugandan last names, which are like sometimes 20 characters long, and they're shaped in syllables, but you can't recognize them. We rendered it in a very cursive font. We blurred it and made it kind of dirty to read. But if you squint, you can definitely tell what it is, and we put it up as a test to our workers. And in a single pass, they get 98% keystroke accuracy. And so that convinced me that, yes, our workers, they take this very, very seriously. And if we're doing double entry, which we are, you're going to get very high quality results out of it, as long as it's unambiguous.
This is super, super cool. Maybe I missed it, but how are you guys pricing?
You did not miss
You didn't
it
miss
because
it. We didn't tell you.
So fundamentally, it's by page. That page price varies a little bit by how much information we're actually extracting each time. But it's basically, once we have that document set up, it's just per page. And so that's use as much or as little as you want. Obviously, use more, that price gets a little bit better for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a retail cost of 20 cents a page. That is, if anybody signs up, you can just pay 20 cents at a time for using this technology. And then depending on how much information you have, we've gone, I think we have customers paying us 3 cents a page and others paying us $2 a page for really dense, really hard pages.
So what percentage of the data is actually done automatically versus sent to the human workers?
Great question. So every single field is looked at by at least, nowadays on the order of 5 different machine learning / computer vision algorithms. And every single field has potential to be looked at by up to 5 different human workers, just depending on how it works. And so there's like fairly complex workflow in the back end to figure out what should go to the machines and what should go to the humans. So that's like the high level answer. The slightly more nuanced answer is that we're actually using human beings to dynamically train OCR algorithms to make predictions about your answers. So for example, if you give us, what's a good example of a field? Let's say state. I don't know state. I like state as an example because it's bounded. There's 50 states, handwritten states, right? What we'll do is we'll take a small subset of your information and we'll get absolutely correct answers from our human workers, and we'll essentially bias our learning algorithms and there'll be a host of them. One is just in charge of saying, is this blank or not? Another will be in charge of saying, okay, which state is it? And we test those against these gold standards that we got from the humans, so we get a sense of how well is the machine doing. And all this is completely transparent to you. If the machine is doing well, we feed more to the machine, and it saves us money. If it's not doing so well, we give it to the humans, and they get it done for you. The bottom line to you is that we maintain that 99% accuracy rate, and our effort, kind of like frantic pedaling beneath, inside the machine, is to basically give as little to the humans as possible. Oh, yes, back there.
How many languages do you work in?
That's a great question. So our workforce right now is extremely competent in English and any language spoken in India. We've had people do French and Spanish as long as it's a Latin script to some success, although the keystroke accuracy for cursive open-ended text suffers just a little bit, but enough for some customers to use it. One of the advantages is that we are language agnostic. That means our OCR doesn't need a dictionary. And so the amount of time it takes for us to scale up in a different language, probably like a month. And we also have a self-serve feature where we can essentially serve your data. Let's say you have some PHI, and even though, despite all of our guarantees, you don't want to show it to anybody outside, you can just have your own staff do just one column. You can just have your own staff enter all the social security numbers, and everything else goes out on mechanical turn. And that's an option that we're going to have very soon. And in the same way, we can serve particular portions to competent language speakers in somewhere that we'll find for you. I think there was another question. Yes, sir.
So you showed us forms, and obviously that's the concept, but what about multi-page documents, or more specifically, non-form documents?
Are you thinking
contracts?
Contracts?
Contracts.
Yeah. So right now our specialization is forms. We're starting to do cool things like receipts and business cards that don't have a form structure but are small and can sort of fit this metaphor. We're working very, very hard on invoices. So invoices do not come in that sort of shape, but there's a box in there somewhere that has a bunch of line items and a bunch of totals, and we can now find that box and successfully extract the numbers out. And none of this is rocket science just because we do this, but what is really hard is to get it up to the 99% threshold. And so for example, the invoice solution is not yet out as a product, but if you sort of maybe join our mailing list, we'll let you know when invoices contracts, academic papers, that kind of thing are out.
Yeah, contracts are, just to follow up quickly, we hear contracts a number of times, and when it's kind of digitized that whole contract for me, that's actually kind of the typical OCR problem and something that we just haven't really wanted to do just yet. When it's more kind of the form contract where it's always the same text, but there are kind of 4 different fields, 4 different variables that those are really the specific things I want to capture. There are times when actually that can work. And we've heard plenty of customers who they have some type of contract workflow, especially when it's, again, a standardized type of contract, that it's feasible.
Yeah. Let's say your sig page always looks the same, and what you actually want to do is capture the fact of, let's say they have an option at the end. Capture option A or option B plus their sig and the date. And you just have those 4. We'll actually go through and ignore everything but the sig page, find it, capture those 4, and kind of render it like this so that maybe the signature is in a little picture like that.
So have you tried contracts? Because some contracts have terms and conditions with fine print types, very small font and very large. I'm just curious if you tried something like that already.
I don't think the smallness of the font is really going to be a problem, but it's sort of the resolution of the scan that could potentially pose a problem. The human eyeball can understand very blurry things, but what we tend to do with contracts is we run it through OCR because they're really long. People actually don't care enough to pay people to sort of meticulously type in every word of a contract. They only care about a few things, like the things that are fillable in the blanks, right? And so if you go in and you draw a box around just the blanks, we'll run that through the humans. Everything else, if you care to, we'll OCR it, and we'll kind of give you the best effort. But the contract solution, just to make it very clear, is not part of the production workflow yet. We're just working with a few of our customers on that.
Expanding our earlier question, when you scan a document, let's say you scan that in here, does it scan only black things, or does it also scan the white as dark pixels? So depending, because if it scans the whole thing, the file size is very big, because it also scans the white spaces.
I see.
Can you address on that?
That's a really good question. So this kind of gets into what kind of input do we take. We actually have an iPhone app where you can go to the App Store right now if you have an iPhone and download the Captricity app, and it allows you to take photographs of your document. So in that case, they're full 8 megapixel color photographs with your finger in it. Sometimes we get that a lot. Or people love to test by just taking pictures of random things, and so we get that too. But to answer your question, we on the back end will pre-process everything to look for your document. In fact, what we can do is if there's a document and then there's your head next to the document, we'll hopefully try to zoom in on the document and crop you out, and then take the portion of the document, binaryize it, like you were saying, and just keep the black pixels for processing. And then for the human beings, we'll go back to the color image because we don't want to lose that, because different levels of binarization, depending on the exposure, will lose information. So for the human being, we'll actually just lighten it, give it good contrast, and give it to the human being for reading. So we do all sorts of little tricks like that. In fact, we'll take the individual image threads and we'll post-process them so that the edges can't physically be matched up against other edges, just in case you have two fields that are adjacent, and if an attacker, for example, were to capture both fields, they can't put it together like a puzzle. So that's something that we do as an additional measure of security.
Cool. Thank you very much. That's great stuff.
All right.
Can we,
Let's move it on.
yeah. Can we take that after?
Maybe a
after the-
question
yeah.
it may be a question that doesn't make sense. So
Get
I don't
this
know
out.
how many in the room are like me that don't know enough about Salesforce, but is there a CRM attached to the actual finished product that allows contact afterwards to follow up?
We can have a little session after lunch.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Rick. That's very,
Thank you.
Brian, very, very cool. So next we have Dave Fowler from Chartio. And Chartio is kind of, we think of good data and Tableau is business intelligence 2.0. I like to call it business intelligence 3.0. Very cool stuff. That's not what he told me to say, but I like it. We're going to have a drawing at the end. So if anyone has not given a business card, it's your last chance. And we'll have everyone stick around for right after for quite more questions and stuff. Thanks.
Thanks. I like to think of this as more like 7. Yeah, so basically, Chartio hooks up to databases and now other data sources. We have recently launched a private beta of Salesforce, and that's what we're here to kind of show. But primarily before that, we focused on data sources, and now we're trying to make Salesforce act like a data source and people be able to interact with it just like a database. And I'm going to just kind of show you what we do. We're very powerful and simple interface. We try to be as intuitive as possible to try to make it so the business but tech savvy user can also make charts and see what's going on inside your database or your Salesforce data. And yeah, let me just kind of jump into the demo. So first we've made this mock company called Boatio. And you can think of it, it's Airbnb for boats. So you can rent your boat out to other people and people can rent your boat. So just imagine that you work for this company and this is kind of an example dashboard of what you have, how many boats are being rented, what kind of boats are being rented, how much money we're making, et cetera, et cetera. To add a chart, this is kind of an example dashboard of what you would see. To add a chart, you click the Add a Chart button. You come down in here. In this example, I've just got 2 data sources added. One's MySQL and one's Google Analytics. And I'll show you Salesforce in just a moment. So we've got, when we connect to your database, this one's MySQL, but we support almost every relational database out there. We pull in the tables and the schema, so we can get the information about what tables and columns you have in your database. So here we just have 3 boats, trips, and users, and inside of each of the tables there's a bunch of the columns listed. And so right now I'm just going to make a graph of the revenue of this company over time, and this company makes revenue by renting out boats. So we're going to get the boat price per hour, and we're going to put that, that's a measure, and then we're going to match that by trip date. We only make money when there's actually a trip. Oops. I should look at my own screen. Okay, and what's happened under the hood, Chartio is actually just writing a query based on what we dragged and dropped over. And if you want, you can actually, I like to just start with the query that was already written, but you can come in here and write a custom query. And write, maybe you have something more advanced, you want to do more divisions of math, or you want to do some sub-queries or sub-selects. You can just come in here and make your own sub-query. But we'll go back to interactive mode because that's more fun. And Chartio just runs this query on your database, so it gets live results. We really encourage everyone to have their own live reporting database, and we just connect up to that. It's a big differentiator of ours is that we connect to databases that are on your servers. We don't make you do data warehousing and upload us a copy. We don't take a copy of your data out of your Salesforce either. We deal with the data where it naturally lies, and that's just more secure. And so we run this query, we come back with the data, and we can plot it in a table, or a line chart, or a scatter, or an area chart, or a bar chart. And that's really simple for us to switch. Right now, we're grouping everything by week. But I can change it and say, instead I want to group it by month. And we're actually, by default, plotting the average price per hour of the boat. But we can change that to, instead, find total. There we go. And there we have, we see the revenue of our company over time. And we can also do fun things and drag over the type. And now we have everything split out, and we can plot it in a different way. We have everything split out by the type of boat that we're renting and how much money we're making off sailboats versus banana boats and other types of boats. So then we can just save this to our dashboard. And we make it really easy to just drag around your chart and resize it to whatever size you want and place it anywhere. I'm just going to delete this chart for now because we already have a completed dashboard. You can also make many different dashboards here on the left. Just click Add a New Dashboard if you want to have a different grouping of what's going on. So in just like a matter of just a few seconds there, we had a question: how much revenue are we making per month? And we just very easily through the Chartio interface made that chart. We've also got cool drag and drop sliders for the date range if you want to change what range of the month you're looking at. Chartio actually goes in and rewrites that query, whether it's the Salesforce data or your database data. Both of them can be shown on the same chart and on the same dashboards. And we just kind of change our queries based on using the same syntax that data source uses. We also are really excited about having these interactive drill downs. So, for example, we can look at this chart here, and this is boat types rented, and we see that in this time period, sailboats are the most popular boat that's being rented. So we can click on this bar to learn more information about it. And Chartio automatically rewrites this query to show it based over a larger time period. We're now looking at the rentals by week. And we can click on one of these bars and zoom in even further and look at it by day. Only 3 days this week was there a boat rental, in a sailboat rental, I should say. And we can also pivot by other things and pivot all the way down and now separate it out by Bob's, by both name, and one was the Bob and the Jennifer and the Mary. And we can look at the source data as well and see the actual rentals that happened for those specific boats. So it's really cool to be able to just start out at the top level. You have a graph, and a chart is nice. It answers you a question for you. But usually when you get that answer, you just have more questions. You want to dig deeper. And so we try to make it as easy as possible and as frictionless as possible to dig down and find the data that you're wanting to look at. So you guys are most interested in Salesforce. Here's all information we pulled from Salesforce. We're doing beta support for this. You do have to email us to get the link for this. Just hello@Chartio for any of you interested in playing around with Salesforce data in Chartio. And we like to have that same interface. We're still working out some of the kinks, but we have that same drag and drop for creating the charts, and I'll show you one here. We can go in. Adding a data source to Salesforce is as simple as you go to our Add Data Source page, you click Salesforce, and you just log in as the OAuth, and that gives us access to your API. And so we can choose something, drag over a number of data sources we want to plot, and the date they were added. So we're actually seeing the average number of data sources over time. And we can plot it in whatever way that we would like. And to show you guys, maybe a lot of you know SQL here. So we're just, instead of writing SQL like we were showing in the other examples, we're just generating some SQL here and pulling those results back for you. Those of you who are really good at SQL, maybe you do that for a living, can come in here and add and modify this and chart basically whatever you want. So we'd like to do a really simple charting interface on top of Salesforce, make it really easy for you to drag and drop and make charts. We hear a lot of people kind of frustrated with what Salesforce has for reporting, and we hear a lot of people also say, I'd like to see that information next to my database information, along with my Google Analytics, and just kind of see it all together on the same charts. And another group of our customers like to just verify that what they're putting into Salesforce is correct. A lot of times you're pushing stuff up to the APIs, it breaks for a few days, or something's not going up and the data's just not synced up in Salesforce as much. And so it's nice to be able to make your graph of number of new customers that you're already storing in your database and put that next to the Salesforce results of how many customers they're having plotted, and just make sure that those are both paired up correctly. Often you find that they are not, and then you can drill down and figure out what is that actual difference that's happening. So yeah. That is, I think, everything to talk about. Oh, sorry, I wanted to also show that when we do pull in your database, and as I said, we pull in the schema information of everything that's going on, or all the tables and columns. With Salesforce, we do the same thing. We treat Salesforce as much like a database as we can, even though SQL's not quite, as powerful as SQL. But we pull in all of the tables, and Salesforce, many of you know, is just kind of notorious for having just a whole bunch of tables. If this really just was, if all the tables were displayed in your left side column for your dragging and dropping, you might be overwhelmed. There's just too much going on. So we really make it easy. We by default hide a whole bunch of these that just aren't as important of tables. But you can choose to hide more of them or unhide the ones that we have hidden. Your custom objects, custom tables, almost everyone uses Salesforce, uses a lot of custom tables. Those will all also be pulled into the schema. And a lot of times they have weird cryptic names. I guess create a date is a fine one, but you can come in and change the name in Chartio to be whatever you'd like. You can change the type that we read. You can also set up foreign keys on how one table is related to the other. We pull this stuff in automatically, but sometimes you just might not agree with how Salesforce has chosen to set it up, or maybe something has changed. If your schema ever changes, you can hit refresh schema. And finally, I don't know how this is going to look. There's a lot of tables in this, but we do have a schema diagram that kind of helps you learn. Having trouble loading. Oh, Salesforce is quite big. I should have tested this earlier. But we have a schema diagram that kind of shows you how all the tables are related to each other. I just need to drag it away. It shows you how all your tables are related to each other, and this is just kind of helpful for people who don't know your data source and want to play with it more. Yep, that's Salesforce. I can also show you the Bodia one, where we just have 3 tables, is quite smaller. That's a little bit easier to read, but this is your Salesforce data source. But as you also hide things, and we need to do a little bit better job of hiding a bunch of the fields that just aren't necessary, you can get less and less of this and just make it more easy for people to actually interact with and use. That's also one of the problems with the Salesforce interface, is just all the options, and the fact that we let you kind of eliminate some of those and limit it is nice. So, I think I've covered everything. Mel, am I forgetting anything? Oh. So we have different products. So one way we have different pricing. It's an analyst plan is $95 a month, and it goes up by $50 per user a month. Sorry, adding additional users adds $50 a month to that. But we also tier things based on number of projects. And so if you have a sales team and a marketing team and an exec team, and you want to keep those data sources separate and those dashboards separate from each other and have different permissions for the different people on there, you buy things up by projects. And those we charge $300 a month for. And so that's our pricing. And yeah, there's also a 2-week free trial. And so you guys can log in and just hit your Salesforce login button and give it a whirl. Actually, you have to email us to get the Salesforce access, but we're more than happy to do that link right away. So, yeah.
I saw the SQL example and the Salesforce example. Did you have an example with both, using both?
Yeah. Let me see if I added a data source to this. Salesforce 1. Let me see. I did add a data source. I'll add a chart. And we can do, drag this over again. And so we'll get, this is the Salesforce one. And then what we just do is we click to add a new layer. And then we can like this. And now we're taking it from this MySQL data source. I think this is actually really old data. So the timelines aren't going to match up. Yeah, the timelines don't match up, and they're very different sizes. But let's go into query mode, and we can actually, I'll show this, count, and we'll divide this by 100 right now. See how that does. That's a lot better.
Cool.
So yeah, you show them next to each other, and yep. So one of those is from MySQL, and one of those is from Salesforce. Any other questions?
Yeah, no, so how does it know that year is the variable?
Yep, so back in interactive mode, I chose week, that's the default. And you can change it to month or anything else. So was that your question?
Okay, so my general thing was, can you join two data sets?
Sorry, you can't join across them. So we don't do, that's called ETL, where you actually combine the two data sources. We're working on some stuff for that. But we do let you plot them on the same. And what it's doing right now is just recognizing that the x-axes are the same values. They're both data x-axes. So they don't both have to be. They both have to be kind of the same x-axes. Otherwise, your chart will look really weird. So, and that's what we try to do to keep it simple. Is if you do something wrong, we still try to draw that chart for you, and you can see, oh, that chart looks really weird. But usually that kind of explains, like, because it's visual, we can kind of learn, oh, I see why it's weird. This one's grouping by week, and this one's grouping by month, so I need to just alter that.
What about, so Salesforce reporting, they have such features as bucketing or matrix summaries, things like that. What can this do?
Yeah. So let's drag here, and we can drop profit. Sorry. I'm going to get rid of this layer just for a second. I'll get rid of both. And we can kind of buff it by profit. And the computer's getting slow for a second. Just refresh. Okay. We'll bucket by profit. And profit is actually a measure, but we're putting in the dimensions field. And so you can say profit is over 10. And now we're splitting by less than 10 and greater than 10, where our profit is less than or greater than $10. And you can actually add more buckets if you'd like through this interface. So actually that's one of the problems. SQL actually is a lot more flexible than SOQL. And so basically, if you can do it in Salesforce, yes, we can do it in SQL. It's why we're taking a little while on this private beta is just getting all of those SOQL things to work the way that kind of SQL does, and we're having to do some extra manipulations and things like that on our because we're very insistent. We also support Google Analytics as a service, and we're very insistent on making all the data sources that we add and use act in the same way, so that your users don't have to learn two different types of SQL syntax and Salesforce API and Google Analytics API. We try to keep those consistent. So.
Is there a row limit to tables that you'll analyze?
Say again?
Is there a limit to the number of rows that you'll analyze in a table?
No, there's not. So we connect to your reporting database, and so it's basically however much data that you can kind of handle. So we have users with hundreds of millions of rows, and probably up from there. I'm not exactly sure. And it's all just like they have a very powerful database on there handling it. We also support like Redshift and Google BigQuery, and they can do just billions and billions of rows of data. And the thing is, the things that come back are just the aggregated results to Chartio. So we're really leveraging the power of that database and leaving it where it is. And so if you're doing, I want to see the number of users we've gotten over the past 3 months. That's just going to be like 92 data points that come back to us, actually, even though it could be chugging millions and millions of rows in your database. Still, to us, it's just going to come back as 92 results. So there's usually not much of a load.
What do you do with slow running queries then? Does the user have to be smart enough to know when to put an index in?
If the query is slow and you want to speed it up, you can go into SQL mode, as I showed, and choose to rewrite that query with the index, or or add an index. We give a nice query log and show you all the queries that are being run and how long they take, so that you can kind of modify things if you would like. We also do a lot of caching, so you can set your cache level and interval level based on the data source that you're getting. So you might want to say, actually Salesforce has some API limits, so you might want to say, only query this twice a day. And we keep the old results until then. So it's also nice that if multiple people on your team are hitting the same dashboard, just a couple minutes apart from each other, you don't run fresh queries each time. If you specify, it instead just shares those results with everyone on the team.
So does that mean you can do snapshots?
Oh, man, I didn't show that. Thank you. Yes, all of the charts you can get images of, you can download the CSV data, you can take PDFs of. The dashboard you can also download a PDF of, and you can also schedule reports that are emailed to you either daily, weekly, or monthly, however you specify.
So in Salesforce, they have a snapshot where they actually, you create a table that stores the data of the query, so you can see how it's been over time, which you can't really do with a live database.
I see. So actually, as a security thing, we actually only store the last result that you ever ran. We just write, when we get a fresh result, we write over the old one. So we don't actually do that snapshot. That could be a feature that we turn on in the future, but right now we don't run that snapshot. Good question.
But in theory, that's snapshots are custom objects, so you can access that.
Oh, yeah, good point.
Yeah, I guess you could. But though maybe the snapshots would be for the data that you already set up in Salesforce, so it wouldn't be the data that you're maybe plotting in Chartio, if those are different. But, yeah.
Well, sort of a related question then, just to put it in context. Last year we got a demo of C-Sense, SciSense, and there's sort of the new wave of analytic products like Good Data and Burst and all that. Where do you see your product sort of fitting in amongst these?
Yes, great question. So there's definitely some newcomers in this space for sure. Some have been around a little longer. So our product, we aim to be really, really simple and focused towards that business user to be able to use, and also just, if you're focused towards that business user, make it simple for him. It usually means it's simpler for the engineer as well. And then the other thing is we're vastly different on security in that we don't actually do any data warehousing. And we think that has a benefit in two ways. One, it's never going to give someone else an entire copy of your database, in that you just never know what they do with it. In Chartio, because we do a query log, you can see in Chartio, like, we have a log of all the queries that you've ever run, but you can also check on your database. This is all the queries that Chartio's ever run, and just verify that. And also because of that, we're more real time. When we were hiring our first salesperson, I remember we were giving her a demo, and in the middle of the demo, another sale happened and it updated right on the dashboard. And we were like, that's really cool. And it's really helpful, and it's really nice these days. There's no reason you shouldn't be doing real time. It's just really nice. And the other thing, like I said, just our interfaces are fairly different, and it's kind of a taste of what you like. I tend to like the way we do things and the way we're going.
No,
I hope so.
There's definitely some cool things here.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and again, for the business user, everybody has the issue of, gee, my self-report dashboard is great, but it doesn't have finance, it doesn't have, all of our other siloed systems.
Yep.
This is a way to create an aggregated dashboard.
Yep. And we also know, like, a lot of people put a lot of effort to putting extra things into Salesforce, just so that they can kind of chart them and put them with that. Like they'll spend weeks putting their finance data up into Salesforce just so they can see it there where they need to graph it. And Chartio makes that easy, where you can just aggregate it into that and still work off your database data and not have to worry about it.
So you can have your forecast and you can have your revenue, but what you can't do right now is do a custom graph that's comparing the two or in real time. But.
Yep.
But at least they're up there on the same email or same.
Right.
same dashboard.
Yeah, you can't divide unless you're like exporting, putting it into a database or something like that. But usually, if you were like pulling the data out and you did want to do some comparisons like that, you know, you would be putting it into a database, the results often, and then we make it really into the chart. You're still going to need to chart those results.
So you talk about going directly into Salesforce data and you use the user's login and password.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what allows you to adhere to the security that's set up in Salesforce? Like, what if somebody's not allowed to see data? Do you let them bring that data back?
Yeah. So it's whoever logged in. That's the security that we're going to have. We're looking at ways to make it so that you know, there can be multiple logins for that Salesforce account, depending on who logs into Chartio. Like each person kind of has their own login to Salesforce. But right now it's just, you know, like the manager or someone on the team will log in, and you'll be able to see the data that they have access to. Because I know in Salesforce there is more granular, where depending on who runs the query, the data comes back differently. And we don't do anything fancy with that. We just kind of like whoever's login we got, we run that query as that user. But we're looking at ways to get more granularity. Good question. All right. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.
All right, I'm going to have a drawing. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Kuang. All right, any last business cards? I'm going to have a drawing for an Amazon gift card, which is not on the premises, so I apologize. I'll mix up on that. Brian, do you want to do the honors?
So will you be sending out my mobile app?
To your email. Harold? You still here? Oh, there you go. All right. Harold, you won. Thank you. Harold, thanks everyone for coming. We'll probably do this again in 2 months. Probably the first week of August, I guess that would be. And if anybody wants to sponsor the next one, shoot me an email. And still some food and drinks. Help yourself. And thank you very much. Yeah.
Things going for you guys? Drowning or?
Got my hands full with, I mean, we have a customization project that is entering its 6th month right now. It shouldn't have been, but you know, it's not it hasn't been technology at all. It's just been, you know, getting sales, finance, and legal together.